Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. Revel's Tips to Brewing Up Coffee Success. Today, we're presenting a jointly discussion with our friends from Grind Coffee in London, and we're going to be discussing about what makes coffee shops successful. Quick housekeeping before we start: everybody will be muted. We will not be taking any questions, but however, we'll be sharing the link of this presentation and the contact information of everybody who has participated. Today, we're going to be talking about the size of the coffee opportunity business in London. We're going to discuss a little bit about Revel's client in the coffee vertical, and we're going to discuss and hear a lot about the insights about our friends in Grind and what made them successful. In a nutshell, we all know the size of the coffee business and the growth that we have seen in the past 20 years. It's a $10 billion industry, and with thousands of locations all over the UK, more specifically 3,000 coffee retail shops in London alone. Today, our attendees, our panelists over here, Ted from our friends Grind. He is the very first member of the Grind team, and he is the creative director, responsible for a lot of projects, and has been managing the vision of Grind's future. He has a lot of experience, and we've been working together for a long time. Pike from the Revel team, the very first employee in London. He has been responsible to assist clients, whether in training, optimizing the system, and he leads the sales engineer international team. I would like to give the mic to Ted over here and give us a little bit an overview about Grind. And thank you all again for attending today.
Hi guys. So Grind was founded in 2011 in Shoreditch in East London, where when founder David Abramovich kind of inherited a kind of ailing mobile phone business and decided him and one of his friends to turn it into a espresso bar. And in the 8 years since, we've kind of since pivoted from specifically coffee shops and now kind of more day, all night, a very accessible offering of kind of restaurants. So coffee, food, and cocktails are really kind of high standard. Today we have 11 restaurants around London, as well as a recording studio and one kind of commercial coffee roastery where we roast our coffee, the Grindhouse Blend. Alongside that, we also have a kind of thriving business of coffee retail, so that's Nespresso compatible pods that we sell online and on Amazon and various other channels. But still, coffee is very much our bread and butter. Coffee, cocktails, food, all day, every day.
Perfect. All right. And for those that it's about Revel Systems. We are a company that started off in 2010 in San Francisco. We're one of the pioneers in the cloud-based point of sale. So we do have a lot of markets that we work in the UK, the US. We have offices in Singapore and Australia. So it's a very established company here in the UK. Most of our clients are in the coffee business. So we're here today to discuss that. Now, I know, and based on first-hand experience, I've seen a lot of clients that purchase the system and take a look at the business and go, okay, let's have this, let's have online ordering, let's have this design for the shop, let's have this type of coffee. And after a few years, or sometimes after a few months, it does not work. And, they go to something else, they do marketing. But the question we always ask, and vice versa, this is also for owners and coffee shop, even employees, what really does make that successful coffee shop? What are the elements of that successful coffee shop? Not just probably in London, but our smaller market is taking a look at London, but this does just not cover that. It can work anywhere. So we're here with Ted again, talking about his expertise with the coffee business. And just to show you guys some of our clients that we work with Triple Two Coffee, Monocle Cafe, Black Sheep, and these are just some. We do have a lot more, but these are the big brands that we work with, and we have Ryan too. So a couple of things that's quite interesting when it comes to the coffee industry, right? So would you believe that there are a lot of coffee shop stores. And as Ahmad mentioned earlier, there are 3,000 stores in London alone. And out of those 3,000 stores, one out of every three Londoners pass by and buy coffee in a week. So it's not just one, probably sometimes even I would pass by a coffee shop twice in a week, three times. Sometimes I'd even work in a coffee shop if need be, you know? And you'd see the same faces usually in the same shops. So it's quite interesting. And you spend more than just one cup. Sometimes that one cup of coffee will turn into two. Sometimes you buy a baguette if you didn't have breakfast or, something else. Or sometimes you end up ending your day in a coffee shop. So what drives that in a coffee shop? What's the first point of, let's say, success in a coffee shop? So a lot of owners think it's about the location. So Ted, do you think it's really about the location?
Yeah, so obviously we spend a lot of time and kind of a lot of energy, as I'm sure all operators do, thinking about what locations we ought to be in, and both the kind of the footfall and the kind of the brands in the area, the existing brands there, but also just the kind of people that are going to be there. So obviously where we are in East London has kind of been, although perhaps not the original place where the kind of specialty coffee movement arrived in London, which was very much kind of much more central in Soho, was the area where once it did arrive, it really kind of blossomed into the culture that we have in East London today. And a big part of that, I think, came from the kind of community in the area. So obviously Shoreditch has gone through a huge amount of development in the last 10 years, and a lot of that has been led by the arrival of a kind of creative industry there. So lots of kind of ad agencies, lots of kind of WeWorks popping up. Obviously the whole kind of Soho House development that they did around there with a bringing in Mother around 10 years ago, which really changed the face of the kind of people that were in Shoreditch, and that those people have a very specific set of tastes, and coffee was one of the aspects of that whole lifestyle that they kind of just took shape around, and that led to a massive amount of demand in Shoreditch and East London. And I think that you can have that each area of London or wherever you are in the world comes with its own specific set of kind of stories and narratives around why the people are there, or perhaps the community in the area. And I think, but not only about location, but making sure that the footfall is great in your location, but also it's the right kind of footfall, it's the right people, it's people that are going to be able to understand and kind of find something in your brand that they feel they can attach themselves to. And I mean that's something we found enormous success with, both in Shoreditch and as we've rolled out as we've kind of expanded around London, perhaps tweaking the offering and the brand to align better with the areas that we're opening in.
Ah, I see. So it's based on an area. You take a look at the culture, what things happen, what needs around that specific area. Okay, so it's not just really about, okay, there's tons of people passing this street, it's good to have a coffee shop.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think it's also worth bearing in mind that coffee as a whole is a relatively it's a kind of low spending business, and that you'll have the people, although people might, as you say, stay for a coffee, two coffees, three coffees, stay for a baguette. Actually, a lot of the time you have people who are very grab and go. They'll come in, they'll spend the £2, £3, £4 for a cup of coffee, and then they'll simply leave again. And that is, to be honest, the bread and butter of all kind of our takeaway coffee business, and the people who will come back religiously day after day. Loyalty is so important. But I think the important thing about footfall is that you do need to drive quite a large number of. I mean, coffee as a whole is a high volume business, especially when you're paying kind of London rents. You do have to have just a sheer volume of people, just simply so you can pay the staff, because you're probably selling handfuls of coffees before you can afford to kind of have a staff member stand there for an hour and make them. So yeah, I think that because of the accessible price of the product, it means that it's quite difficult to operate a coffee shop, at least in a kind of metropolitan or even a residential area, without making sure it can be quite high volume.
Okay, interesting. So now that coupled with the tastes, you mentioned the tastes, and this is something that we discussed before. You mentioned there's a coffee scale.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that there was a coffee scale when they started off. But now it opened my eyes that it's not just the same beans, it's not the same quality.
Yeah.
How do you guys decide it?
Yeah, I think that there's a kind of assumption with coffee, a bit like as you might have with wine, where there is while everyone knows there is certainly good coffee and bad coffee, there is actually a almost objective kind of grading scale to this. So this is something that I talk about quite a lot, where people will have when we're discussing kind of our coffee with other operators and talking about why we might feel that ours is better than theirs. Because as we know, I think product is simply the most important thing with these things, and your loyalty solution or your location or whichever all comes ultimately secondary to the fact that if you can't make a good cup of coffee, you've been in real trouble. And I think that the specialty coffee, as I'm sure anyone listening to us will very likely already know, will be. There is a grading system of kind of 1 to 100 of the kind of SCAA grading system called Q grading, and then these coffees are given Q grades through here. And at the very bottom you have a kind of commodity grade coffee. So this is probably lower than even the standards that kind of the big high street like Starbucks and Costa are buying. And then you have one tier up, which are kind of the more premium coffees that like Starbucks and Costa will import. And then it's not really until you get to about 80 out of 100 that you start getting into what we would call specialty coffee. And then once you get past 90, you get to these award-winning coffees that will often go to auction and just trade for enormous amounts of money. Yeah. And so that for us, I think especially within the kind of other operators within our sort of segment of the industry, really you're kind of working between an 80 to an early 90s standard of coffee, and we're really happy to be at a point where we feel that we're stable enough within the business and we're able to afford these more premium coffees and actually be able to say without any kind of subjectivity or word of a lie that the coffee that we're making is really, really good, and that we are able to not only buy the best coffees and import them, but make sure we're giving the people making them a fair price. Which I think that as both as a business and as a consumer should just be at the forefront of people's minds in 2019. I think that you see a lot in the news about kind of the whole woke as a marketing strategy, which I think gets a bit can be a bit mercenary. But I think that all operators should be taking these things into account in 2019.
Okay, interesting. But I think quality is just one part of the bean itself. I mean, so you have the quality of the bean, where it came from, but a lot of coffee shops now have their own roasteries, or they have a specific taste.
Yeah.
So how does that affect the bean itself? How does it affect the coffee?
Yes. So the really crazy thing about coffee is that actually the quality of the beans you're putting into it can actually be massively kind of discounted by the process that you go through roasting it. So coffee roasting in a kind of specialty sense will often roast kind of slightly lighter than the traditional like Italian dark roast style that you still see quite a lot of in Costa and in Starbucks. But it's really exciting to see the way that this whole specialty coffee industry in the last 10 years has kind of developed its own way of taking these products. But also that these products so coffee as a whole is changed massively by the roasting process, and actually, although it's perhaps not even the roasting process, but simply the process that then goes in store, but we're only able to guarantee through heavily investing in training and development of all of our staff in store. In that you can get the best coffee in the world, roasted by the best roaster in the world, but ultimately, if the guy who's pulling in his espresso shots on the machine doesn't really know what he's doing, the whole system can get let down. I think it's a really interesting business to work in because it does have this vertical element in that you have to guarantee, or at least do your best to guarantee, a level of service and of quality at every stage within the coffee process. Everything from where it's being grown to how it's being imported, to how it's being roasted, to how it's traveling from being roasted, to how long it's being kept. So, for example, like we won't really serve any coffees that are less than 3 or 5 days after they've been roasted because they're just too fresh. There's so many variables in the system that make it a real challenge, especially as you grow at scale, to make sure that the product you're offering is of quality. Yeah.
I see. Interesting. And people really look for these tastes. Probably based on your experience, how many customers went in grind and they go, okay, I feel this taste is unique, and I really look for it.
I think it's a really difficult one to say, because I think that to people who are perhaps I think on the inside of the industry, there's a lot of that kind of hipster beard stroking guys who really,
Yeah.
but actually, but I think it's also really important to remember that often on the consumer side, that people aren't able to tell the difference between these individual grades of coffee in the way that some of our really kind of educated roasters are. And actually, a big part of it for us is about making sure that we're not too swamped in this whole inform people about the complexity of this process. And it's actually about, hey, look, we have a great product. We're really keen on sharing it with you. There's no kind of ivory tower. There's no like turning your nose up at you because you don't happen to know about the blends in the way that we do. I think a big part for us, and actually a big part of the success of grinding, especially with our takeaway coffee, has been an attitude of just like real. We want to share the great part, the kind of good news of this, and the accessibility of it with people who would otherwise be going to a Starbucks or a Costa. There's a really lovely story that from about 2012 where we have a Starbucks next door to us in Old Street in Shoreditch Grind, the original grind. Before we opened it, there was they closed this store down for a refurb, and basically overnight, people were getting phone calls in the morning being like, "Oh God, we need to go pull in all the stuff we have," because essentially our coffee sales increased by 30 or 40% overnight while the Starbucks were refurbing, and then never really went back down again. And I think that's a really lovely, for me, is a really lovely anecdote about that kind of sends a message of everything we're trying to do with our coffee at Grind, and that it's really about taking people who would otherwise be drinking Starbucks and going, "Hey, look, there is special coffee is great. It's really exciting. The product is great. It's probably a hell of a lot better for you than drinking drinking Starbucks coffee. But just try it. Let's tell you about why you think it's great. But yeah, ultimately, there's nothing that we can't tell people what they like or what they don't like. But the product has in that sense, the product really spoke for itself, and it's really amazing, and something that kind of warms our hearts to some extent, that we can take that people can be won over by our product alone there, and also that there's such an education of the market going on in the UK. I think especially it's kind of a lot of the work has already been done now in central London, but I think that especially with the UK as a whole, there are still a lot of people that aren't really aware that you can get these other coffees. You can get a coffee that isn't a Starbucks or isn't a kind of this hot milkshake that they'll make you, and that coffee is something that you can pay attention to and that you can enjoy, and that neither has to be particularly expensive, nor has to be something that's kind of overly sweet, but you can really go and get a really good cup of coffee that tastes great, has kind of complex set of flavors, but also can be a really kind of nice place to spend your time.
Okay. Yeah. Now, a lot of things put in place. So you have the quality, you have the staff. Now, when it comes to the culture, as you mentioned in Shoreditch, there was a movement. They had this certain taste, they had this certain need that they look for. How does that affect the shop itself?
So I think that as we've grown, I think it was obviously the business today is very different to what it was the business like 6 or 7 years ago when I first joined Grind. But the idea that we'd have that as we've grown, we're now at 250 staff, and increasingly hospitality. We've come to realize that realistically, hospitality is just a people business. In that, if you have the right people, you don't really need to worry about anything else, because the right people who are passionate about your product and passionate about the business and passionate about the other people they're spending their time with inside and outside of work, those people are always just going. We're lucky to have a great many of them at Grind, and those people are really inspiring people to work with, both for ourselves and also I think for the other people around them. I think that often for us, we've realised that being what makes you a really great Grind member of staff is actually the same thing that make you what we think is a really good person. It's a level of kind of it's a generosity. It's about the kind of generosity of spirit, and about a kind of positive minded nature, and I think it's something we've had to work really hard. Work really hard on as we've grown to make sure that we retain our small company culture, and that I think there are a lot of challenges within the industry in the UK, and especially with things like Brexit going on, which is a whole other kind of kettle of fish. But also that there are people who are it's a lot of staff who are kind of transient, so people who will come and work for us for 3 or 6 months while they're spending some time in London while they're travelling, or perhaps students and want to pick up a kind of a part-time job, but they still want to have something that's rewarding. I think young people more than ever are looking for roles and businesses they can work in that they can feel, even if they're working there part-time, that they feel like they are able to be rewarded in more than financial terms. I think that the idea that they're going to come to work for Grind, and that they're going to feel like something greater than themselves, and that they're going to be developed as individuals, both within the skills that they have, but also just the kind of general life skills, is something that businesses need to be more and more aware of. And I mean, the kind of, especially the kind of millennial kind of work market of people who are looking for fulfillment in everything that they do. And I think that there's the working in a part-time job. I mean, as I did while I was at university, like I think can be really rewarding for people. So yeah, you have a lot of staff who are kind of transitory, and you have people coming and going, and that means that for us, we've had to really invest in making sure that our onboarding process, that when people first join the business, to make sure we bring them into the family very quickly, and that also we invest a huge amount of money in making sure that we're training and developing them and make sure they have the necessary skills to do the job they're doing. But a lot of it comes down to a kind of using kind of digital tools, or making sure someone's there to make sure they put their arm around them and make them feel like a member of the Grind family, and just making sure that they have a great time working there. Like if the staff, like you can walk into almost anywhere, it looks like the staff are having a good time. Like the customers probably are too. Go on.
Yeah, because all these coffee shops are springing up every corner, every street. They'll definitely be looking for experienced staff.
Yeah.
So, and I think you mentioned it. It's part of that being a family. So when they try to convince your employees to join their end of the shop, you'd say culture is a big part, and they would want to stay.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And also I think a big part of that for Grind is having scaled relatively quickly, at least within the last 4 to 5 years. The fact that we are able to offer people opportunities in the future and be at a point where we have members of staff there who are managing teams of 15 or 20 or 25 people running a restaurant, who very much started in the business two or even less years ago, quite literally just coming in and making coffee, and that through our development of them, we've made them into the people that they are professionally today. And I think that people are inclined. I think people can occasionally be a little bit cutthroat with these things, but people are inclined to be loyal to people they feel that they've been taking care of them. And I think that there's the kind of compound interest thing in that really making very small continued investments in everyone who works for the team, and making sure that they feel they've got someone they can speak to about aspects of their life that outside of work, and to make sure that we are supporting them in their life as well as in their work, is something that allows us to really not necessarily just even drive loyalty, but to make sure that, as you say, just feel like they're part of the family.
Yeah, true. Okay. Now, when it comes to, you have people as part of the shop, as part of the whole package. Now, we've talked about what's inside the package, the gift itself, but how about the wrapper, the store itself? There are a lot of shops that would always go for, you'll have your hipster, you'll have your, our shop needs to be proper. Yeah. White lines, lean lights, everything's proper in their shop. I'm not saying it's different. Some people do go for that. Now, what makes that design or the shop culture, the shop fit itself, work for the shop, for the coffee?
Within, at least within specialty coffee, but also within the kind of restaurant and hospitality industry as a whole, it's been a really interesting change in the last 5 to 10 years, where 5 or so years ago, you had a lot of people with this very much this kind of hipster aesthetic of balsa wood, and everything looked like it had been knocked up over a weekend. And I think that was also about the fact that there was a point where, especially with kind of the people are able to. I mean, the really great thing about coffee shops is that people are able to start a business there of their own, a small business, with relatively little initial investment. And that if you've got the right staff and the right products and the right location, and that someone's willing to put some real blood, sweat, and tears into it, then people are still starting businesses today, kind of out of just tiny little units where they just knock to kind of counter together with their friends over the weekend, and that are going on to be really successful. I think it's really important that these small businesses continue to grow in this way. I think that as a whole, within the last we were one of the first people to really reject that very much, that kind of hipster, that hipster kind of MDF aesthetic, and start like looking at ways that we could make the sites kind of look not necessarily kind of smarter, but just make sure that we were offering a kind of space that felt as comfortable and warm as considered as the product we were offering. And that was something that for us, it took us a little while to reach that. So you go back to the original Shoreditch Grind.
Yeah, it was quite different.
It was very rock and roll.
Yeah.
We've been on a real journey there, and obviously each site we do will quite considerably change the look and feel of it, and they look really great. And it really kind of pleased with it. And recently opened Greenwich Grind. I mean, a kind of big conservatory space in Greenwich, kind of big, like 6,000 square feet, and it's a really amazing example of everything the Grind can be in 2019, and it's fantastic to be there. But I think to go back to design, I think it's really interesting to look at the ways that what's perhaps driven these changes in the way that people are fitting them out. And I think it would be really hard pressed to say that it wasn't a big thing to do with Instagram and the fact that the industry as a whole is like increasingly visually led. I think having been a bit of an early adopter on the platform and having really grown our audience on there for five or 6 years now, so we kind of tower over these industries. We've got about 120,000 followers on Instagram, and but for us early on, it was very much about driving a how to put it, like a way that we can engage with people in the same way we were trying just kind of driving kind of data collection through our loyalty programs. But just the ability to be able to communicate and what felt like an authentic way was really important to us. But as obviously Instagram has grown through kind of being purchased by Facebook, and it's just the fact that it's now just taken over.
Everyone has an Instagram.
Yeah. It means that it's such an important part of kind of popular culture now that it means that hospitality kind of operators are investing more and more, making sure that their spaces are Instagrammable, and that they are not even in terms of the lighting and the furniture, but perhaps even kind of creating experiences that feel like a kind of a photo opportunity that we do through our neon signs, and through largely just looking at our architectural drawings that we'll produce for our new sites through the lens of creating kind of moments where we feel that there's going to be a really great photo here.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an Instagram thing, but it's also just a kind of visual culture thing, and that people want to go and spend time in places that look great and that they want to kind of they'd like to be seen in.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that aside from coffee, Grind's main items or main selling points, your food, you have your after hours events. So now, and this has been growing. So a lot of coffee shops would close at 5. Now that's being turned over its head, and they would remain open from 5 to probably 10, serving drinks or dinner or whatever. Now, do you think this is a good movement? Will it help the shop?
Yeah, I think so. For us, looking back, we kind of accidentally fell into the decision. So basically, we started opening late just because we wanted someone to kind of hang out when we weren't working, or just to basically open it up and maybe kind of drink some beers, some cocktails with friends in the evenings. And looking back, it was completely. I'd love to be able to say that we kind of sat down there and had a kind of vision for this as being a great idea. But actually, looking back at it now, it was just a really great idea for the business, just in terms of being able to drive sales at a point where we were already paying rent to be there. I think, especially in London now, rents are just so phenomenally high for coffee shops and restaurants. That, I mean, for even residential, that it means that the operators just have to squeeze ways that they can find times at any point in the day where they can bring people in and sell them things. And while people will drink coffee kind of late into the evening, especially kind of within the kind of hustle bustle central London where people kind of often working quite late, there's also just the idea to be able to fill a fridge full of beer is never the worst idea that anyone has. But also, I think but I mean, at least for Grind, a big part of us is about that accessibility of being able to go in there at any time of day and feel that there's a space that is warm and is welcoming, and that you can hang out with friends, or you can sit there and do some work, and that you can kind of gather. You can basically a place for people to bring themselves together in a way that perhaps you can't in London, when a lot of our customers or even staff are students, and that living in just kind of in houses that perhaps they're not able to necessarily feel like a home, and to be able to offer a place for them kind of that's neither work nor home, but there's something in the middle, and that they can go and socialize there and feel welcome and just have a bit of a safe space in. So that means going. I mean, from some of our sites. I mean, one of our site in Liverpool Street on a Friday will open from 6 a.m. until about 1 in the morning.
Wow.
And so it will. And that's because I mean we're right there in the
Mhm.
city, so we kind of traders
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
first thing in the morning before they all
It's the
start.
main hub, you know.
Yeah, and then serving kind of coffee and cocktails and coffee and beers and cocktails and wine until some sites even open really even later, and it's really lovely the idea that people can come almost at any hour of day and Grind will be open, the service will be good, the product will be good, you'll feel welcome there, and we'll be pleased to see you. I think that's really important in terms of growing the things like the kind of community.
Mhm.
I think a level of the point where people feel that they can rely on you is the
Yeah.
point where where I think you really can drive people's loyalty. I think there's nothing worse than going on a kind of Saturday morning out, whether it's outside your door or it's miles away, and going somewhere and finding it's closed because you hadn't noticed because they're closed for refurbishment.
Oh, that happened quite a few times.
And it's just a bit disappointing. I think the idea that people can really rely on you as an
Mhm.
operator. Early on when we had a lot of our sites, we've always had this kind of rule where for whatever would happen, we wouldn't take any amount of love nor money to ever not be open at 9 a.m. in Shoreditch Grind on a weekday morning, because we know that, as we said with the Starbucks story, that if people go there and it's not open, then they would simply go somewhere else, and that we've got to make sure that in people's minds we are like a mainstay and we're just not going anywhere.
Perfect. Yeah, because it's like a lifestyle. You know, you go there every day. Yeah. Now, you also mentioned Instagram. You mentioned your online sales. So it also plays. There's a part of it that's technology based. So, for those coffee shops that just started off, do you think in their focusing on technology would help? So you have your loyalty apps, your gift cards. Do you think this would help them?
Yeah, I think totally. I think so. For us, we were quite keen. Obviously, our CEO was previously CTO of a tech business, and that also within the kind of that myself and David and the other people on our team, we're kind of quite passionate about technology, and we're always very much aware that we wanted to build something here and that we could allow, and that things like a proper point of sale system with us, we have with Revel, and also just things like investing in a loyalty solution, investing in a kind of data capture solutions, would allow us to not essentially have to be playing catch up with ourselves later on. So for us, we don't do a great deal of like things like marketing but just simply making sure that you have that your store Wi-Fi is good, and that your whole operation can be as empowered by technology as possible, and also that it feels relatively seamless, and that you go in there and it doesn't feel like the technology that there is getting in the way of between your interaction over the counter with someone, but just someone who, I mean, there's nothing worse than when you're kind of in a restaurant or something and people have those like, and people are perhaps like they're struggling to use a system, and the process of ordering becomes as much about your server's interaction with the till point as it becomes about your interaction with the server, because ultimately the hospitality is a human business, and that we've used technology heavily to really empower that. Yeah, perhaps we don't use kind of we might not have any kind of kiosk solutions in the way that other businesses might, but because that's largely because we've invested in this technology to make sure that all the people we have can do the best work that they do. Which is really, which for us has been really exciting. It's been a real journey, and to also take people who work in that business from other businesses where perhaps they've been using a naming no names like kind of old school point of sale solution with a big kind of clunky unit. It's really amazing to see how well the people who are taking a pride in their job will kind of click with a new system and go, oh my God, this is so much better than what I was using previously, and will allow them to be better at their job. And I think that goes both on the front end with people, well, not on the front end, but people putting every order of their people through, but also just having the tool set there with your technology that your managers are able to see like live sales wherever they are, even if they're not at work that day, or see this week's sales versus last week's sales, or quickly look things up on their phone, or look rotas up on their phone. The fact that these people can run a business essentially off their phone if you're a site manager, rather than sitting at a kind of plodding terminal or like sitting on a laptop, is really great for us. And it, as you said, just allows them to go and do their best work.
Yeah. So, you know what, just to give you an idea. So, I lived in the Philippines before, and for me, technology is quite big when it comes to the coffee shop. Um, we usually have blackouts in Manila. So what I do when back in college, which is a couple of pounds ago, like 60 pounds ago, uh, I once we have the blackout, we'd always go to a coffee shop and do our college work, college papers in the coffee shop because we know there'll be good internet, there'll be coffee that will keep us up, and most of the time you'll see your friends there.
Yeah, I think like I mean, it sounds really crazy. Like a city of 8 million people sit there and about talk, building a kind of community within like a small space like that. But it's true. Like that, there are people who are going to Shoreditch Grind every day that I know simply because they were going there 5 or 6 years ago, and many years on they're still going there. And yeah, I think technology has said that really empowers that. I think that moving forward, it's also a big part that like people we just that it's really important to simply not be left behind the curve on this stuff. Even within the developments we had over the last couple of years, where things like kind of not even contactless cards, but then kind of Apple Pay and the fact that people can mobile payments are still struggling to take off in the UK. But if you look at like other areas of the world, but like things like kind of like a friend of mine was in China a couple of weeks ago, and he arrived. He got off a flight at about kind of 10 p.m. at night. He went to go out kind of into the streets to go and like basically go and find anything to eat. 'Cause he hadn't eaten, I think, for 12 hours at this point. And because he has a British credit card, he can't be set up with WePay, which is obviously like WeChat's kind of payment solution. And because he couldn't set that up, he simply couldn't get anything to eat. And to a point where he'd go into a restaurant and the restaurants will be entirely people operating things on their phones. And yeah, look, like that might seem a little bit like the future to us, but this weekend I was talking to someone for Sweet Green, obviously, who are in the US, like massively scaling, driving loads of money, and yeah, they're doing like 50% of their sales through the app. And it's just like really, it's like just amazing the kind of work they're doing over there. You look at it in the US last year, there were more mobile payments were made through the Starbucks app than through everyone else on Apple Pay combined. It's like that there are rewards for businesses investing in these things, especially if it's something that you can build or work with a partner that can allow it to be like kind of rugged and completely reliable 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, technology is just everywhere.
Yeah.
Even kids would always have something to do with technology.
We find that our sales, like technology driven. I mean, people users of our app that we built with the Revel API are just all young people, right? Like I think that ultimately, like we live in a very specific kind of central London bubble here, where even people in their kind of 40s, 50s, 60s are very like attuned with technology, but really it's young people that can drive this in the future, and that young people that we know that are going to account for will be all of our sales in 5 years' time will be people who right now probably might not even have a credit card. Yeah.
Everything's on their phone, right? And that's why in Revel we believe that technology is our next step. So we have these iPads, we have everything that's quite easy to reach. We have the Revel API, we have our customer service that's always there, our loyalty that you can always use. You have our open API, which you can register and get the data off from the system, which again could help the shop. Now, for us, for you guys, we've seen Grind grow from a small shop that we saw on Shoreditch. It wasn't for me. Initially, Shoreditch Grind was really for me the first Grind. To now opening huge places, 2 floors even, and this is just amazing. I know the coffee business is so big. There are things that you as a coffee shop could do that would bring customers in. Regardless where you are, people would go to you. It's either for the taste of the coffee, it's because of the culture, because of they feel that they're a family, they know the baristas. And it really is amazing how it grows. Now, technology is there to help. I guess my parting words is it really is to find your niche as a coffee shop. Especially the community that would help you dictate what's the flavor, what the business would look like, and because eventually it's the community that consumes it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reality of this stuff is, especially working with Revel on this, is that in 2019 every business is a technology business, and whether or not the technology is right at the very front when you walk in the store, or it's something for us that we would like to keep quite behind the scenes, but simply allow to make sure that all of our staff are doing the best work they can. There's no avoiding the fact that your business or anyone's business in 2019 is a technology business, and that investing in that is still 99% of going to be 99% of the time going to be a way that you can significantly improve sales, improve the running of or efficiency of your business, and as we said, just simply making sure that everyone there is doing the best work they can.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you, Ted, for
Thanks so much.
sitting with us and talking with everyone. So, as mentioned, we will not be taking any questions for this session, but if you do have questions, you can see our emails and my number on the screen. Please do send them to us. We will be glad to answer them. Thank you very much, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you.